Hello. All right, can everyone hear me? Is this sounding good? Go ahead and type in the Q&A if you can hear this. We're coming in loud and clear. Yes, sounds good. Perfect. Awesome. Sweet, love it. Sorry about that. All I was just saying is I wanted to kind of get the word out there like we did before, and go to our Facebook page at facebook.com/balanceworklife, and just put a quick comment when you go and click share that you're here and we're going to learn about our motivators, what motivates us to work, about what motivates us to work. And it's really going to be about our values, and it's going to be really exciting. So tell them to come join us. Come join us, and then click share. Cool. Appreciate anyone that can help us with that. That'd be great. So now let's go back to our presentation here. And I want to run a quick poll when I get this up. All right, so I'm going to move the poll over here so you can see it. I want to get an idea for how many of you are coming back from the previous webinar we did on Monday, and how many are new to this webinar and this is the first time coming in. So that way we can know what kind of stuff we can just skip over or talk about briefly, what stuff we need to kind of review or just get caught up in a quick sense. So it's looking like we've got, I'll give you guys a few more moments to go ahead and chime in, and we're going to broadcast those so you can see. So it looks like we're almost 50-50 for new and returning visitors, so that's really good to see. So let's get started then. The first thing here. So like we did on the other one, when you registered for the e-course or for this webinar series, we asked a few different questions, and one of the ones that pertained to this particular series was, why does your job feel meaningless? So I wanted to see some of your examples. You can put it in the Q&A if you want to be anonymous. If you don't care, you can put it in the chat. We're happy to share amongst all of us and kind of learn together. So go ahead and put some of your thoughts on why is your job not feeling as meaningful as you hope it would be. Perfect. We're getting some good ones here. So here's what some of the people put on the web form there when they registered. We saw this one a lot. No acknowledgement from my boss. It never changes. Micromanagement. We're unable to, it's unstable, the profession and education and personality differences. And that came from Lori. So here's some good ones in the chat too. Seraphima, no room for developing ideas. That's a really big one. I hear that a lot amongst a lot of people I talk to too. They kind of feel like they're in a job where it's stuck in a rut, or that nothing's going to really change there. So if we keep going here, does any of this sound familiar? I go to work so I can pay my bills, but it really doesn't offer me much more than that. Or I can get excited about a project, but more often than not, I feel like I'm lacking the motivation to be as productive as I could. Or I don't know how I'll be able to keep working where I'm at without getting bored to tears. I'm not moving the direction I was hoping to in my career. So if any of those are sounding like you, go ahead and put yes in that chat or in the Q&A, either one. Yes, yes. Good, good. So these are exactly like the kind of feelings that we want to go over, and how we can kind of get more familiar with what really drives us so that we don't have to feel this way in our own jobs. And it's really, it's not a bad thing if you've ever felt this way. I think every one of us has felt like this at one point or another. So the real question is, how do you kind of stop that from happening again in the future? Or how do you make it less likely? So the big thing is that we all know that there are those people out there who are like this girl, and they're just like super excited about what they do. And there's those people that just tell you, oh, I love my job, and work doesn't feel like work. And how many times does that just really annoy you when you hear that? Or I feel like I make a difference in the world because of the work I do. Or I get so much out of my job beyond just a paycheck. That's exactly how we wish we feel, but but it's really hard to find that, and it's far and few in between. So again, some of you might have heard this, but I'll try to share in a different way. I actually didn't have a lot of jobs where I was feeling that badly about what I was doing. My first job was at a water park, and so you're surrounded by happy people all the time, and it actually wasn't that bad of a job. And then I went into college and I got to work with great companies. I was the face of Dell for ASU. I got to work with Microsoft as a consultant, and I got to do some really cool technology marketing jobs where, for example, I marketed a smart pen from LiveScribe. I don't know, if you've seen that, go ahead and put a yes. If not, say no, because it's a really cool thing. But basically allowed students to take a pen and record their notes and record the audio, and it would sync it to your physical paper notes. So you could play it back later when you're studying for an exam or whatever. So I was really excited. I had this really big buzz about my jobs. Nothing had ever gone wrong. I thought it would never happen. And then when it came to graduating, I was brought into a rude awakening that it doesn't always turn out the way you hope it would. And unfortunately, a lot of the opportunities that came my way after graduating were not that good. And the best one was one where I would be a salesperson for an IT outsourcing company, delivering cold calls as part of this small team there. And it was really scary because you were expected to bring in a certain quota not every 90 days, and it was really apparent that if you didn't bring that in, you were gone. And people were just hacked left and right, and new people were coming in all the time, and new people were leaving, and it was just really it was chaos. So I felt all those feelings that you saw there earlier. I felt like I was stuck somewhere that I didn't want to be. I didn't feel like there was any meaning in my career. I didn't feel like I was getting anything out of it other than that paycheck to pay the bills. And so I was desperately looking for other jobs while I was working there. And eventually Balanced Work Life found me, and they brought me in, and I learned a lot from the things that they teach about understanding yourself in your career and understanding your values so that you can really kind of find those jobs that are a good fit for who you are as a person instead of just trying to find a job and making it fit for you. So I got to see that firsthand, and now we're helping other people be able to experience that for themselves as well. So we wanted to go ahead, and here's what you can kind of expect from us. So we have in the diagram below, this is from our About page. And if you're on the call or the webinar last Monday, you kind of got to start to see the first part of that, knowing yourself. And we're going to keep on that topic again today. But before, again, you'll see we talked about how we would do our job if we were to do it the way that we wanted to. And today we're going to talk about more of why we're going to do it why we do our jobs the way we do, and how to make that why more prevalent in the jobs that we do. And then Friday we're going to talk about how to make those connections with other people out there, so that we can those three parts together. If you go back here, that's what really makes your perfect career. You get to your dream careers not by yourself. You usually get it there with understanding yourself and being able to work with that great team that can get you to the places you need to go. So if that sounds good to you, go ahead and type yes, and we'll continue in there. Oh, good, cool. So what I wanted to do is introduce my friend here, Carol. And Carol, can you get yeah, there we go. Looks like she's coming in. I was worried for a second. I was all by myself. But Carol is really one of our top coaches here, and she's the one who really works one-on-one with a lot of the executives that we work with, a lot of the managers and the teams that they work with. And she helps them understand themselves better through the assessments that we use, and she'll help them align to whatever their goals are and be able to find those career syncrasies where they kind of match with their values and their behaviors. And then a little bit about us. How many of you found out about this webinar through Careertopia? Go ahead and type yes if you did, no if you found it out somewhere else. Seraphina found it from there. Kyla found it from there. Nadia found it from there. Good. Lots of people finding it from there. So that is mainly the face of where we go out and we share these things with the general public, everyone out there that we can. And we've been recognized as one of the top 50 blogs for young careerists. We have a free e-course, How to Find the Perfect Career Fit for Your Personality. We've been seen on a lot of these different sites, Lifehack, U-Turn, we've been on Dumb Little Man, Women 2.0, Huffington Post. So we're trying to get the word out there, and that's what we're focusing on right now. But we're also part of Balanced Work Life Company. And what they are is Balanced Work Life really works with the executive people and at that level. And we deliver thousands of these scientifically validated career and talent assessments each year. And we work with their teams to kind of, again, go over our understandings of each other and how to align ourselves and our teams. So here are a few of our clients we work with, and here's what we're going to cover today. So we're going to talk about why your motivations and values are important, determine which motivations, your attitudes or values, those are kind of the same, they're words that we'll use interchangeably, but they'll be the same kind of meaning that we're going for, and how those things drive your life. And we're going to talk about how to recognize the driving force in others' lives. Because if you don't just understand your own values and what motivates you, but you also know those of your coworkers, your spouse, your friends, it's a lot easier to work with them. It's a lot easier to build those relationships, and it's a lot easier to get your goals where you need to go together. So I'm going to go ahead and pass this over to Carol, and she's got a wonderful
All right, thanks, Bryce. Hey, everybody. Thank you for attending our webinar today. It's like Bryce has already introduced, we're going to talk a little bit about why you behave the way you do. Monday we talked about the how, more of an observable behavioral style. Today we're going to understand why you actually behave that way. And if you don't know what your priorities are, remember, somebody else will determine them for you, per Judy Suter. It really is important to understand what values will drive your career to be the best it can be. So what are values? Basically, values are a viewpoint. They're basically how you perceive the world. It could be a mindset. As we all know, we kind of get raised under our family's values as we're growing up, and then they will evolve over time. We start to judge and perceive things differently as we go through life, just depending upon the experiences that we have. So basically, we have a paradigm of thought that is continually moving and moving and moving. You want to keep going, Bryce? All right, thanks. So basically, values really put the thought in your mind and then impel you to action. It's about really carrying out those values and your perception of how you perceive things should be done. And so it's a value system that is seeded early on to through the end of time for us, as long as we're here on this earth. So your passions definitely will drive your action. As DISC has been an observable behavior since 440 BC, as we saw during our DISC webinar, it's really, Spranger's ideas came back from as far back as 1928. And again, it's about observing how people see the world differently. I see the world a little bit differently than Bryce. Bryce sees it a little bit differently than his wife, Kelly. And that's okay, but it's really trying to understand what those 6 different attitudes are. So what has happened in our modern day now is Bill Bonstetter has created a way to actually apply this human behavior science more towards the business community. And so through this, he has validated research that shows there are certain occupations that require very specific values in order for somebody to perform at a very superior level. So, for example, we utilize these assessments when we are coaching someone so that we can better identify, what really drives a person and what their passions are, so that we can actually match it to the correct or job that they're going to perform almost, seamlessly and effortlessly at. So the 6 different motivators that have been identified, basically, you see here on the screen. Theoretical is really, if you have a drive for knowledge, you're always doing research, you're Googling on the computer, you're reading books, you're doing online seminars. It's really that passion to continue to learn. Utilitarian is basically a drive for a return on investment, whether that's your time, money, or talent. It's about always what is the bottom line. I want to make sure that when I'm investing in something, I'm going to get something back. Aesthetic is very unique. It's about having this desire for harmony and balance. It's somebody who really wants to self-actualize in several different areas of their lives. It's about maybe your environment. It's about creativity, either through arts, music. It's a very unique motivator that we'll get into more here in a bit. Social is really a drive to help others. It's wanting to mentor, to coach. It's the most altruistic motivator out there. And then there's individualistic. This is somebody who's really driven to lead others. It's about having the power and authority in order to really achieve the areas of accomplishment that they want in their careers. And then the traditional, this is the last motivator, is really a drive for having a system of life. It's a system that you live by, you make decisions through. Sometimes it's status quo. Sometimes it's just, what background do you have, whether it's, I'm German, so I live by a lot of German traditions in our family. Maybe it's somebody who's just driven through processes and needing order and structure in their life. So those are the 6 different motivators that we use as far as identifying a person's individual passions for careers. So again, just like in DISC, there are patterns that start to emerge about an individual that help us easily identify where will they perform at a superior level. So let's start with theoretical. So think about this in terms of yourself, whether or not you're a high theoretical, because most of the time high theoreticals are always looking for the truth and they're seeking the knowledge. Sometimes it's just seeking knowledge for the sake of knowledge. It's having those hard, cold facts and trying to solve problems. A lot of high theoreticals attitudes might be, well, I'll use my cognitive ability to understand, discover, and systematize the truth. Many times high theoreticals that I've worked with are kind of the know-it-alls, or they're the person that you can go to. If you don't have the answer, you can go to that person and they'll have it. So they're very valuable for teams because they're all about solving problems. They're very objective in how they do it. They'll always have all the facts and figures when they do give you the information for solving a problem or getting the information to help you solve the problem. So it's always having that knowledge. They're the go-to person. Primarily, a lot of times when they do get under stress, they may neglect or ignore a lot of their friends and close relatives or, their dog, because they're so focused on finding the truth about something. So you have to kind of be aware of that. That's how much their passion for gaining knowledge is. So why don't you go ahead in your chat or the Q&A, why don't you type in for us what careers you think might really be good for a high theoretical.
Research. Bing. Good job, Seraphima.
Mhm.
Analyst. Awesome. Cool. We'll go ahead and...
So you were right on.
Examples here.
The researcher, somebody who's really trying to identify maybe in the research labs for medical research, or maybe it is an analyst looking at statistics and understanding people, behaviors and motivators, what makes people tick. Maybe it's a teacher. Maybe it's a dean of a university. You just never know. It's somebody who basically loves to learn. The next motivator.
Yeah. I made the
Yeah,
librarian there.
library. Absolutely. There you go.
Cool.
So the utilitarian motivator basically is really somebody who has the desire to find a practical application of things. They're looking for how to be the most effective and not wasteful, because they're always looking at the return on investment, whether it's their time, energy, or money. And the basic attitude is every investment I make will have a greater return in time and resources. And that's absolutely valuable, especially in many business organizations, because it is about looking at the bottom line. It's recognizing if we make this investment here, we're going to be able to, get a revenue of this over here. So it's always gaining a measurable return on whatever business aspect that they are investing in. Usually they're very bottom line, hardworking. They're maybe not so monetarily driven as sometimes people think, but it's about always getting results. They're good goal setters and goal achievers. Part of the tendency for them when they're under stress is to be a workaholic. They're very, very hard workers. They'll give long hours at trying to solve issues or problems. They may come across when they're under stress that they have little concern for others, and they are always, because they're so bottom line focused, that they may miss the broader picture, the bigger picture of all the details into getting things done. So again, what type of professions do you think a high utilitarian would enjoy? Okay.
You're coming in. See lots of people typing right now.
Ah,
Oh, Bing, both of them at the
investment
same
banker, absolutely. That's too funny. That's too funny.
that's good.
Absolutely. You're also looking at salespeople. We are basically assessing candidates for sales positions. We want to make sure that utilitarian is at least one of their top two motivators, because they are always going to be driven to hit the numbers. If you've got a quota, they're going to be driven to hit those numbers, very competitive about that, and in very short 90-day cycles. So it's about the money. It's about, as you said, that banker investment. And it's, sometimes it's the most common motivator in our society. So there are a lot of high utilitarians always making sure that they are not wasting their time, money, or resources in our society. Let's move on and talk about the next motivator. And that is the aesthetic. And aesthetic is as I said earlier, very unique. High aesthetics really are very subjective thinkers. They live for the experience. They're very feeling and very passionate people. They love to self-actualize. So a lot of times I'll depict them as jack of all trades, master of none, because they're always trying something new because they want to live that experience. The basic attitude is I will enjoy and experience the beauty around me and allow it to mold me into all I can be. And that is so typical of a high aesthetic. The value, I always tell a manager, because many managers really don't know how to capitalize on this particular motivational strength, but these individuals actually see things that the rest of us miss. I always allude it to a private detective coming onto a crime scene. There may have been policemen on the scene for an hour before the private detective comes on to review the scene, and he'll immediately pick up on things that everybody else missed. Well, what is that? That is the high aesthetic. They see things that the rest of us miss. Sometimes I allude it to high utilitarians are very black and white, kind of linear thinkers. High aesthetics are very abstract thinkers. It's almost as though they see the world through a kaleidoscope. So they're very creative, expressive individuals, and they have this deep appreciation for beauty and to see things from a different perspective. But they really don't want things out of balance, so it's very important for a high aesthetic to have balance in their personal and professional life. What do you think, or what career do you think a high aesthetic would perform well in?
Yeah, this one's a little tougher.
Yeah, it's creative expression. Oh, we got a couple people typing here. All right, designer,
Artist,
architect,
designer,
perfect.
architect. Do you see our
I
slides?
know. Wait a minute. Absolutely, absolutely. So you're
Yeah.
right on.
Here we go.
Architecture. It's an
Architect.
interior designer. It's somebody who can see the big picture and actually hone in on all the detail. The gentleman on the right, he's a food taster. He's tasting different foods, and it gives, and probably combining different things to come up with different flavors and recipes. Maybe it's
Yeah,
I
food
bet,
critics too, probably, right? Because the colorful language to
right,
describe every little
right.
detail.
Sometimes they're creative writers. They're writing novels. They're writing movie scripts. They could be ballet. I had one client. She was very high up in a company in a management position, and she had off the chart aesthetic. And I said, Janet, where does that come from? And she said, well, maybe that's because I built my home out of used tires. So. High aesthetic actually manifests itself through many different experiences. So the next motivator is social. The social is really the most altruistic. It's really always caring and giving of others before yourself. And so their basic attitude is, I will enjoy and experience the beauty. Oh, that one's wrong. That's the aesthetic. We need to go to social. I'm sorry. I will invest myself, time, and resources in helping others to achieve their potential. So basically, it's somebody who really is always investing in others. They're willing to give of their time. They rarely will say no. So the value is that they are selfless. They're very generous of their time. They actually see and then want to develop the potential in others. They are the individual that absolutely loves to work for a leader who has a cause. And they are normally not wanting to be in the limelight, but they are the great second chair to help that leader move the team to more success. Primarily, they can be, when they're under stress and they overdo the social goodness that they have, they can actually be interest to themselves because they can't say no. Because they're always wanting to help. So they become a little overzealous in that regard, and it really may hinder their time management and getting things done. They're out helping everybody else get what they need done, and then they come back to their desk and they go, oh great, it's 4 o'clock and I had a 5 o'clock deadline, right? So I don't know whether anybody can relate to that, but basically I see a lot of things coming through. The teacher, absolutely. They like to create a particular experience, absolutely. But mostly around a particular individual, a group of individuals. So,
Yeah, I have a good story for an example. So I'm a utilitarian and theoretical, and then my wife has a lot of social too. So when you have social and utilitarian, it can be a little hard to like come together on things, because a good example of this is when my wife's a hairstylist, and she's also the youngest in her family of 11. So she has all these older sisters, brothers, and their kids, and most of them live around us too. But they'll constantly be coming into her salon and basically getting haircuts and their hair colored and all this blow dry, and they fill up her time constantly so that she's not getting any paying clients in. And so a lot of times she comes home and she was there all day, but she didn't make any money. And so it's really sad for me, because I'm like, you did all that for nothing. And she's like, but I feel so good helping others. So it's like she still gets fulfillment, but I'm like, I don't see how you get fulfillment out of that. So, but that's exactly like kind of how that kind
yeah,
of thing.
so everybody keep that in mind. His wife is a high social, because we're going to expose Bryce's motivators. So keep that in mind.
Yeah.
So again, what careers might a social person enjoy? Party planner. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely enjoys planning great events for others. They probably get, you know, at the point where they wish somebody would plan a party for them. But it's true. They're very giving people. As you can see, there's a nurse, there's a teacher, there's a gentleman. He could be a firefighter. They're always somebody who's, you know, who's willing to help others. That might be me, and after Pat's run on Saturday, I hope somebody's there to carry me after running. So.
Yeah, no, that was actually from
that the
the
Boston
recent
Marathon?
Boston event. That was one of the, just someone off the street going and picking up people.
Well, the first
getting them
responders,
safely.
they've talked about that. When you identify most of those first responders, they probably are very high social individuals because they are so caring. They'll give of themselves at risk. And that's why I say firefighters, paramedics, those type of individuals, I'm sure all, you know, will score high in the social. So the next one is individualistic. So think about this. Individualistic people are usually asserting themselves towards causes where they can actually be recognized and be seen as being victorious. They want to be in positions that give them that kind of, you know, limelight. It gives them the ability to be seen and therefore really potentially get advanced in the position wherever they're at, whether it's their company or another company outside that has heard about them, but it's actually always keeping themselves in front. And they're great networkers. They actually know just the right people to network with in order to get them to that next career. So their basic attitude is, I will achieve the highest position and wield the greatest power or influence. Absolutely. They love leading others. To lead gives them the ability to actually control their destiny. It sounds a little selfish. It's not. They'll want to lead and bring their team with them. So it's not just for their own success. It's for everyone on the team's success also. But it is about achieving position, it's about advancement, so it's always about carrying out that winning strategy. So they're very, very good networkers, usually very strategic thinkers. How that might be seen under stress is that they can, you know, really the inability to advance or have the lack of opportunity for individual advancement, that makes it really rough on them. When I have somebody who has high individualistic in their assessment and they don't have the ability to lead in their current position, they are frustrated. They wish they could find a job where they could actually manage people. That's what they want to do. So that's when we get into some career planning and saying, okay, then let's explore some different opportunities, or let's talk about some discussion points with your manager about building that into your personal development plan. So with that said, what are some careers that you believe an individualistic might enjoy? Yeah, this one's not as, yeah, there we go. Politics, yeah, a lot of politicians. Yeah. Project manager, most of your high-level managers and companies have individualistic as either their one or two. So politicians, people who like to be front and center. You've got some, you know, athletes, Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods,
Kobe Bryant,
high
probably.
individualistic.
Tiger Woods, yeah.
They are the role leaders, right? They represent. They're the spokesmen of the team. Think about that. High individualistics want to be the spokesman of their team. So great pictures for that particular motivator. Last is traditional, and traditional again is really wanting to have structure and order, which sometimes is built off of a very strong belief system. They really focus on the meaning of life. They bring in sometimes that spiritual element, and they may have this attitude of, I will pursue a system for living. It's basically, big picture thinking is basically about understanding the totality of life and finding the meaning of life through a system of their choice, whether it's a religious, whether it's spiritual, whether it's through Taekwondo. You know, it's just finding whatever system works for you, and then that helps guide you. Military, absolutely. It's really living consistently and according to that belief system. So some people may see that as a closed book, which can be a little bit of a conflict within groups. So when you think about a traditional, what types of careers do you think a high traditional would really find fulfilling?
Pastor. Yes. That's one of them
Absolutely.
we'll be showing.
Yeah, military, pastor. As I said, a lot of times it's just the ethnicity that you find high traditionals in. Think of accountants. Think of tax attorneys. You know, very, very strict guidelines. They're very status quo. Many times they can't veer off of that. So a closed book, so to speak, when it comes to certain guidelines that certain careers have. I always say a lot of your administrative assistants I'd like to see have high traditional, because it's about order. It's about putting in processes that are repeatable processes that aren't constantly changing, so that you can maintain some sanity for the boss. So a lot of times I like to see the admins have that. So again, do any of these values really resonate with you? So why don't you put into the poll right now and let us know which value you believe is your top value.
Yeah, that's a good point, Nadia. We'll get to a slide in a little bit that shows, again, like DISC, these usually aren't just you only have one and none of the others. You'll have different levels of each of these. But if there's one that's higher than the others, go ahead and enter that for this poll in particular. Cool. All right, we're going to broadcast some of these.
So a lot of socials.
Yeah, seeing a lot of socials. A lot of good doers out there, thinking about others. That's good. Let me close this. We'll go back to the slides here. So we're going to show you kind of what this looks like on paper. So we're going to look at my report. I'm always the guinea pig here. So here we go. Carol's going to talk about kind of what I turned out to
And
be.
so everybody, remember what I told you. Remember his wife's high social. Well, through this ranking, you can see where Bryce's real true priorities are right now, and it's the utilitarian theoretical. Those are very strong values for him. And what came in third was his individualistic. That's more situational. That's basically, he's not negative, he's not positive in that particular area. He's kind of open to it. But where he's indifferent is the traditional, social, and aesthetic. So basically, those are feelings of indifference, and they are not a high priority right now for him. So remember, though, some of these may be driven and influenced by his work environment. So for example, he's really not having to coach or mentor anybody right now. So the social motivator right now is not being utilized. Would that be correct, Bryce? Right.
Yes,
And the
totally correct.
traditional, he really has to be innovative and creating new. And a lot of times it's not about developing processes, it's about marketing is always something new and creating what's going to draw, the market share. So these are all very indicative to what it is he's actually striving to do in his work today. Bottom line, it's that getting results and using a lot of knowledge. And boy, don't we know that about Bryce. He's always seeking out knowledge, and it's either technical or marketing. He is always learning, and he's always passing that along to the rest of us, which is very valuable. We all know when we've got a technical problem, we go to Bryce. At any rate, this is another way to look at Bryce's results. You can see here that his number 1 and 2 are that the theoretical and utilitarian. The black lines that go through the middle of each of these colored bars is the national mean. So you can see how high above the national mean he actually is in those two. So that tells us he's very passionate in those particular areas. Again, look at his social. He is going to be the very opposite of his wife. So that may cause some conflict between the two of them because she may want to spend all of her time giving to everybody else, and he's saying, no, wait a minute, I want you home. There's something else you better be doing, rather than you giving away all your time to everybody else. So it's always having that appreciation, again, of one another's values and passions. The next slide shows us basically how Bryce's motivators and how he scored in comparison to 68% of the population. The asterisk is actually giving us an idea of where he scored compared to that 68%, which is the blue cell that you see here. That's 68% of the population. The vertical line is the national mean. So as you can see, the asterisk is outside of that blue cell. And so that's an indicator. And when it says he's passionate over on the right-hand side, that's telling us he actually scored 2 standard deviations above the national mean. So he's going to have a lot of passionate tendencies in regards to the theoretical and the utilitarian, because again, the asterisk tells us he scored way outside in a very small percentage of our population. Those tendencies are going to be loud and clear when we work with him, and I'm here to tell you they are. On the flip side, on social, you'll see here that his social actually scored outside on the left-hand side of that 68%, and basically that's telling us that he's indifferent. And how does that really resonate, or how does that demonstrate itself is basically he's really self-reliant. He doesn't ask us for a lot of help. He's independent, and that's good because a lot of us can't help him what he's doing, but it also can kind of be a weakness if he doesn't ask for help. So those are things that we look for in someone when we're actually assessing them and saying, how is that actually playing out in your job role today? And is it actually having a negative impact on what it is you're trying to accomplish? So all of these things, this is how we kind of take into consideration. If I was managing Bryce right now, I know that his theoretical and utilitarian are really high priorities for him. So these are 2 areas that we should definitely be focusing on.
Yeah, and I could see how these could really play off of each other with the disc side of things that we talked about in the other one too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You're welcome.
Well, thanks, Carol. So a lot of this is really exciting, and especially when you kind of get to dive into it and see where you fall on these different levels. And if you want to learn more about it, we offer this in our Careertopia e-course. It's kind of like a self-guided walkthrough of where your levels might be on these things. But at the same time, we also provide the assessments for these things that will give you the most accurate results for these motivators, and as well as the disc side of things that we talked about before. So this is for you again, Carol. So how does this tool help me find more happiness in my career?
Okay, so basically, how this is going to help you find more happiness is really understanding what energizes you. What's going to keep you 100% engaged in your job if you can find a job that will that will embrace your motivators. If not, if I'm working with somebody who's in a job and say they have high social, but there's no way to demonstrate that, no development, no mentoring, no coaching that's required in their job, then I will actually recommend that they find doing some volunteer work or maybe mentoring their child's schoolmates, something where that will be fulfilled. Because once you understand, then you can start to kind of look at other career options and see whether or not they align with your top two values. Also, the other thing that you want to look at is understand the culture of the company. If you're looking and you're interviewing for a job, start to understand the culture. What do they reward? Do they reward utilitarian? Do you score high in utilitarian? If you don't, you may not be as happy in that position or within that company. If they reward high aesthetic and you're low aesthetic, again, those are the types of things, and you really have to ask questions when you're being interviewed. That's finding the right fit for you. In order to really bring on the most enjoyable, most satisfying, and engaging job for you.
Perfect. So what I wanted to share here is an actual video that of one of our customers, and she'll talk a little bit about her experience with these kind of assessments and what she learned from it. And if in case this, sometimes the video stuff works good and sometimes it doesn't. So I wanted to give you a link to it on YouTube as well, in case you needed to follow along on your own computer if that's having a problem. So we'll go ahead and put it in here. And we're going to play. So if you want to follow
One of the first
along,
things that we did together,
that's the link,
was we
but
had you
we'll play
take
it here
one of
and
the
hopefully it works
assessments
for you.
from our Careertopia starter kit. And can you share a little bit about what that was like?
Yeah, so the disc is what I took, and I took that online, and and went through it really quickly, and you're supposed to kind of just answer the questions the way that your initial impulse is to answer them. So I did that, and I was very fortunate to have Carol of your staff schedule a phone call with me where she went through the results and debriefed with me, and that was incredibly helpful to me. I actually, it's always interesting to learn about yourself through different tools, but I definitely would not have gotten as much out of it if Carol hadn't talked me through it.
Yeah,
so
she's
that
the best.
really, yeah, she is great. It was really valuable.
Cool. And I remember speaking with her afterwards. She really enjoyed working with you too. And after you guys had gone through your assessment results, I recall that you had experienced one or two ahas about your behavior in the workplace and your preferred communication style. And did you find anything surprising in the results, or anything that impacted you for the rest of your journey?
Everything that came, one thing that, I don't know, I guess it's always surprising when an instrument like that, you start reading the pages and it reads you so accurately, and you think, wow, this is really incredible. How in the world, could this be so accurate? But it really was. There wasn't much about it that didn't resonate with me. And the biggest aha for me, I guess, was that it came up that I'm really not a person who needs to be like I'm an influencer more. So I like to lead through influencing others, and Carol really drove home the fact that I draw a lot of energy from working in a team environment, which is something that I hadn't really thought too much about before.
Great. Yeah, sometimes, like you said, when you have the experience of an assessment like that, on one hand, you go, wow, that really is right on, that is me, but we don't always pull out the applicable data of how that applies in our work. So on one
Yeah.
hand, you're agreeing with it, but on the other hand, you don't see the application until you go through the report or you work with a coach to point it out for you. So, that's-
Yeah, and the one thing she said, she really encouraged me to get out more and to interact more. And she was absolutely right. What had happened is I had kind of gotten into this mode where I felt like I just had to be sending resumes out.
Right.
And, you know, and I was home and I was, you know, home, it just wasn't healthy. So that was really, really helpful to me, just to hear that. And she also really picked up on the fact that I don't like to follow rules. So, which is good to know because, you know, I was looking at big corporations and government jobs and things that probably wouldn't have been a good fit. So it was a good thing, you know, to know about myself.
Right, because sometimes the content of what you'll be working on is exciting and sounds like a good fit, but the nature regarding how you like to follow rules or not follow rules as they're set by others doesn't necessarily work, and then you have a conflict of two strengths.
Yeah,
That can be
exactly.
challenging.
And also the part where how you like to be communicated with was really interesting for me because I went through the list and everything was exactly what the CEO I had been working for had been doing, you know, and I felt just so demoralized by it. And then the way I like to be communicated with, I had another CEO I worked for, and that was exactly how he communicated. And so it was really interesting. It just shows you how important it is to work for somebody, you know, whose style fits with yours.
Right, and I would bet that before taking the assessment and seeing that in that analytical nature, the way it's spelled out in the report, you probably knew you really liked working with this one person and you really didn't
Yeah,
like working with this other person, but you didn't know what it was that, you know, worked well in one case and well in the other. But when you see it spelled out in black and white, you're like, oh yeah, this person is doing all those things that I don't like. Now that makes sense. He's not evil. He just
Yeah,
communicates in a
it helps
different way.
kind of depersonalize it and
Right.
say, well, yeah, exactly.
And if you're remaining in the situation where you still have to interface with that person regularly, then it at least creates some tolerance and maybe a little
Yeah.
more understanding the next time you have to go in the room with them. So
Exactly, yeah,
Right,
exactly.
right.
Great. So I hope that kind of helps a little bit with kind of giving you some insight into how these assessments have helped other people in the past with their career journeys and being able to find the jobs that are a good fit for them. So we're just going to finish up here really quick just by showing you some of how you can get these assessments for yourself if you want. Our motivators report is about 13 pages and it'll show all those charts that we showed today, plus a lot more on the different motivators that we talked about. We also have 11 of those videos that will also dive into what those motivators mean and what it means in your actual report. And we've also included that report in our Careertopia Starter Kit, which is what we usually refer people to. And that's going to include your DISC report and motivators report, the 2 hours of videos that go over your report, and then a year of the People Profiler, which is our last webinar that we'll talk about on Friday. And we're also going to give you access to TTI University just for people who sign up during this period. So how much do you think an assessment and training package like this would run at an executive level? We just want to kind of get an idea for our purposes. Some of you already know what we charge, so that's not fair, but but we just wanted to make sure that we're giving you guys the value you're expecting from these kind of services. So a typical assessment for DISC will run around $100 depending on where you get them from, and motivator assessments are about $50, and then our coaching and video series comes out to about $250 each, and TTI University is about $50 too, we'd say. So when you add those up, the total value is around $300, and our list price is $77. But we're going to knock $20 off that during this webinar special. And the Careertopia Starter Kit, again, it has a lot more in it. It gives you a total value of $800. We list at $175, but we're going to do a webinar special of $147 for you. And all this is done with a 30-day 100% satisfaction guarantee. So we want to make sure you get the value again out of what you're investing into this, because it really is an investment up front to understand yourself and to really get that self-awareness so that you can really build that career journey from where you are now to where you want to go without having to make as many of those maybe mistakes or those bumps and those hurdles. So the way to buy it is we have this all on our website, mycareertopia.com, and then on the shop, and you'll just add the Careertopia starter kit or disc or motivators to your cart and use these web coupon codes there. And the offer is going to expire on Sunday, April 21st. So we're just going to leave it open to some questions now. If anyone has any questions, feel free to type them in, and we will gladly have Carol and me answer these for everyone. Anyone can head out or stay for these questions. Nadia's saying, is the Motivator Discovery Kit included in the Career Starter Kit? Yes, the DISC and Motivators assessments are in the Careertopia Starter Kit. When we can bundle some assessments together, we can pass on more savings, and that's why we really recommend it. Plus, like I said with Carol before, a lot of the DISC stuff interacts with your motivators as well, so you kind of get a bigger picture by looking at the how and the why, and not just one or the other. Great. Perfect. Anyone have any questions about the motivators, or did we cover that well enough for you? Looking good. And we'll pass out the links to those products too, so it's easy to find in an email tomorrow, so that you'll be able to see that right there. Just keep an eye for it. On our next webinar, we're going to talk about how to communicate effectively with anyone. I know it sounds crazy that you can actually communicate with anyone, but we have a great tool that really helps you kind of see what we've talked about on Monday, and how you can see how people have a communication style that might be different than yours, but how you can kind of make those connections and be able to communicate in a way that is going to make them perk up. They're going to listen to you. They're going to want to engage with you, versus the opposite, where here's some things that might really annoy them and they'll turn them off, and you don't want to use these kinds of things. And they're not generic, or if one thing fits every other person. We're very different in the way we communicate, as much as we don't think that sometimes. So again, we just want to thank these people for the photos, and thank you all for attending, and we'll look forward to seeing you on Friday.
Thanks. Bye.